I always say my motorcycles are special because of one thing or another. This KTM here has a long list of special items that got me into buying it back in 2019. I liked it then, I still like it today, but it is not perfect. So, 5 years later, I'm coming here to tell you about what it has been to own this motorcycle. What were my expectations when I bought it, and did it meet them? And what do I still like about it 5 years later? I will also tell you what I don't like about it, and I will describe two problems I encountered with it. One of them was a unique clutch failure. Never saw anything similar with any other motorcycle. I'll explain it in detail. The other problem was a shock failure, and I'll tell you how it happened and how it was resolved. I'll end the video with my final take on this motorcycle and, based on my adventure riding plans for the next few years, does the 790R fit these plans? What are other options that I could consider? The chapters are organized in the time bar below so you can navigate to the sections that interest you. This is my 2019 KTM 790 Adventure R that I bought new in June of 2019. I think I saw all the videos of the 790's launch in Morocco back in 2018 at least twice. I paid attention to what everyone said about it. The 790 was revolutionary then. It opened a new chapter on mid-size adventure motorcycles. Suspension, lightweight and low center of gravity, a new and lively parallel twin motor, and a full suite of electronics. It had the technology until then only available in large adventure motorcycles, and it was all packed as a mid-size adventure machine. It was a magic formula, so much so that it raised the bar for the mid-size adventure motorcycle world. I believe this motorcycle represented a pivot moment for this industry. Since then, other European motorcycle brands such as BMW, Triumph, Aprilia, and Ducati have upgraded or introduced specific mid-size adventure models to meet this new bar. I never thought one day I would want to own a KTM, but what this motorcycle represented at that time, these specs checked my boxes for what I had been looking for in an adventure motorcycle. And the Morocco launch reviews pushed me over the edge. So I went to the local KTM dealer early in 2019 and put my name on a waiting list. They told me it would take a long while for me to get one. But come the first week of June of 2019, Gray Area KTM calls me saying they had an unclaimed 790R in their showroom floor. People ahead of me had changed their minds. A couple of hours later, I was there, checking hands. They took it back to the shop, got the okay from the motherland to start it up, and 1 extra hour later, I was riding the bike home, all in that same day. But let's clear the palette before I evaluate this motorcycle, so you know how to gauge my opinion, especially if this is your first time in my channel. Although I seriously doubt I will say anything different than what you already heard from others about this motorcycle, except I will talk about my 5 years with it. Number one, I'm not a brand loyalist. I own motorcycles from several different brands, and this was my first KTM. Number two, I live in Oregon, where we have a tremendous amount of dirt roads. Oregon is the state where the original backcountry discovery route was created. When the current series of backcountry discovery routes finally issued the new Oregon BDR, or Orbiter, I realized I'd already been to most of their chosen tracks, some of them with the 790R. That is, when I think adventure motorcycles, it means they need to be capable of traveling BDR-style roads ranging from gravel highways to dirt and sandy tracks, two-track roads, and some more technical roads. My review is primarily about this motorcycle's performance on dirt. The footage you see behind the narrative, like what you're seeing now, are point-of-view videos taken by me while riding my KTM 790R. mostly on Oregon roads with a few rides in Idaho, Nevada, and in California. Number 3. KTM adventure motorcycles are considered above average off-roaders, so the bar is actually set higher for this motorcycle, both on what you expect it can do, but also for what the rider should bring to the table, short of being called a poser. So how do I fit this higher standard? Well, I've done a tiny share of competitive off-road riding, as I proudly shared with you in almost all my previous videos, but that was in the last millennium. In all honesty, I'm just a regular, average, and experienced adventure rider. But I'm not a poser either. I basically learned to ride on dirt roads. I've been riding off-road with several motorcycles for many years before getting the 790R. I'm not an expert rider, so you know I don't ride this motorcycle to its full potential. At the same time, this motorcycle is not completely wasted on me. Number 4. By now, from how I present information so far, you realized I'm not a moto journalist. I just like riding, making videos, and taking photos. So my opinions are not biased by any benefits I may get from anyone, not even this channel, which is not monetized as I edit this video. They are my opinions as the owner of this motorcycle for these last 5 years, and I'm a decades-long adventure rider. Finally, this motorcycle has only 2,500 miles on the clock, but those miles are primarily on dirt because I trailer the bike to the locations where I ride it. Although this motorcycle can handle long-distance travel and does really well on pavement, I prefer to trailer it to avoid riding long distances on pavement, and I like to have other riding options at my destination. And ultimately, I'm just a lazy bastard. With that out of the way, here is my take on the 790R. I don't know if I would call it ready to race, but the first thing that I liked about this motorcycle is that it comes ready to go on an adventure the moment you take it out of the showroom floor. My motorcycle has only 4 modifications. 2 of them I considered important, but they apply to all adventure motorcycles available today, which are true handguards and a headlight protector. This is my second headlight protector, by the way. The first one was a Puig, and I lost it somewhere. The other 2 modifications are the mirrors, something we all change as well, and a lower seat, which is personal, so I can reach the ground more easily. That's it. The motor is protected by a factory thin bash plate, and it's also protected by the tank. I haven't had problems with it yet. Okay, maybe I should get one of those thicker plastic plates, but for now, all is good. Other than that, suspension, rear rack, the rider triangle, nothing needs to be changed, unless you want to make it special or unique, or you will actually use it for racing. A motorcycle's final price, in my opinion, is not its out-the-door price, but its on-the-trail price. I think this KTM was, and the current 890R is, good value for on-the-trail readiness for the average rider who wants to use it for BDR-style rides. Back in 2018, there was a lot of excitement about this motorcycle. It was an obvious next step from the KTM's 790 Duke, the Scalpel, KTM's first motorcycle with a parallel twin motor. So it was not a surprise. From the start, it was actually KTM's plan to build an adventure motorcycle around this parallel twin motor. Parallel twins help reduce weight and meet more stringent emission standards. It was quite a move for KTM, a challenge, I would say, considering this motor would replace its famous V-twin motors. The 790 had big shoes to fit. It was inheriting the void left behind by the discontinued 950, then 990. Did it succeed? It's best to ask who is familiar with the 950 generation of motors. Therefore, to test this new motor, back in 2019, only a few days after I got the 790, I invited my good friend Doug to ride it. Doug has owned this OG, a 2004 KTM 950, a first edition of this model, since new. I've ridden many miles with him on all kinds of dirt and pavement rides. He makes this motorcycle move, and it has more than 40,000 miles on the clock. I wanted to hear his thoughts about the 790, so we exchanged bikes a few times on pavement and on gravel roads around town, so we could learn and discuss how the 790 compared with his 950. Here is his take on it. He added some other elements that I'm adding to it besides the motor. So what do you think?
Oh God, that thing is so nice. I mean, it handles really well. You know, I don't think I got it over 6,500 RPM, but man, I tell you, when you get on the throttle, it's right there. This thing must feel like a tractor. I don't mind the sound of it, and you know, I didn't notice any of the traction control or anything like that. So yeah. It was great. I could definitely get used to that. The seat's comfortable. The display is really nice. It wants to go over 6,500 RPM right now. That thing is amazing. It's kind of amazing. I mean, I could definitely get used to that, riding that thing. It's not pretty.
No.
This one isn't either. You know, they don't go after the pretty.
No. To summarize, there is no question the parallel twin is smooth, lively, it feels light under acceleration, like Doug mentioned. His 950 felt like a tractor in comparison, although the 950 sounds a lot better. Well, making this comparison today is a bit irrelevant. Those 950, 990 motors are no longer, and the 790R is today 890R. But I had this footage, so I had to do something about it. It took me only 5 years to make something happen. The next great thing about the KTM 790 is that it is light, and it also feels light. This feel light thing is first because, well, it is light, then its lively motor helps, you know, in making it feel light. And third, the low center of gravity, which mostly comes from its saddle-style tank being so low. It's like it were a big dual sport with a parallel twin motor. Talking about dual sports, without having the right amount of suspension travel, one can only go so far in developing a great off-road suspension. Even when using the best combination of springs, shocks, and geometry. The 790 has 9.5 inches of travel front and back. On top of that, the forks are fully adjustable. The motorcycle's suspension is in dual sport territory, if not better. It inspires confidence. It makes travel in rough terrain better for when you want to ride more aggressively, and it also works well on pavement. It offers great handling on all types of roads. Now, talking about handling, the 790R is a balanced motorcycle. It works well on dirt, on pavement. It has very fast turn-ins, which combined with the fluid motor, with its great torque and acceleration, helps make it perfect for riding on mountain roads, be them paved or the dirt kind. It is such a fun machine. The 790 has a sort of a steering damper. I don't know if it makes a real difference. Several owners of 790s and 890s have upgraded to more dirt-oriented steering dampers in their motorcycles. Maybe I don't know I need one. At least for now, I haven't encountered problems with it. I feel this bike is solid on gravel and sand. Maybe I need to experience deeper sand and gravel. One of the things that surprised me when the specs of this motorcycle were announced was how much electronics KTM packed on this motorcycle. The R version came with the rally mode, up and down quick shifter, and cornering ABS. A few things I like about the electronics package. Number one, undoubtedly, is that whatever setting I set for a ride will stay on, even after I cycle the bike off and back on. Go figure why some others, like Honda, don't do that. The second thing is that I like the large buttons on the left cluster that allow me to change traction control on the fly when in rally mode. Third, when I engage rally throttle, what an amazing acceleration I get from the bike. It transforms it. It has its downsides, and I'll talk about that on the list of negative points about this bike. But here, on the positive side, I love the acceleration I get from slight movements of the throttle. It's so good. If I'm distracted, I end up moving to higher gears too soon. One other thing I like about its electronics is the off-road ABS settings. I know, today most motorcycles have similar settings, but in this specific case, I like keeping the ABS on for the front wheel and off for the rear. Here's an example of a situation I encountered while riding, and on this scenario, I realized I had to go left on this trail. It was too late for the speed I was traveling, so I got on the brakes, and you can see the front of the bike is solid. Now, in slow motion, you can see the rear locked up and went all over the place, but it was manageable. I prefer to have the rear wheel to be free to lock in circumstances when it is needed. A final observation is the overall size of the dashboard. It is clear and it's easy to navigate. I keep it locked on the black background. I can see information better that way than the white background you get during daylight during its default setting. Some motorcycles do not allow you to have control over its service and trouble codes, requiring you to jump through hoops to troubleshoot engine light codes, like Ducati. The KTM is very good about it. I have an OBD2 scanner and app on my phone, and with only a pin converter, it allows me to access the information on the motorcycle. There's one more thing that I want to mention. It has a 5-gallon tank and it has great fuel economy. It doesn't use much gas at all. It's an incredible motorcycle that way. So you will travel more than 200 miles with one tank fill up. Well, let's go to the dark side now. But let's start with the fluff stuff first, like the engine sounds. At Idaho, it sounds like a jar of bolts and screws being shaken. It isn't a deal breaker, but man, at least it's better under acceleration when the air intake sounds predominate over the other sounds. Now, this motorcycle is tall. If you have a short inseam like me, mine is 30 inches, this motorcycle will be tall for you. But you can't have great suspension travel on a short motorcycle, so it comes with the territory. At least this motorcycle has a low center of gravity. It helps a lot. I bought an aftermarket lower seat. They say it helps by 1 inch or so. I'm not sure it helped much in my case. Now let's talk about the looks. Awkward could be a good term. Maybe I can say this motorcycle is unique. For sure, I would never qualify it as a good-looking motorcycle. The headlight, which has been a KTM trademark for the last several years, although I got used to it, it remains an odd kind of look. It reminds me of a praying mantis. It's not a completely bad look under certain circumstances, like a photographer's light, for example, or when it's covered in mud from my last ride. It looks okay. But I wish it had less of a dirt bike look, more of a Dakar look from the 80s and 90s. Maybe I should edit this comment out. It ages me, right? But the Dakar look is actually a trend on the other similar-sized adventure motorcycles of today. Maybe KTM is saving that look for its next generation of adventure bikes to make them look more like a revitalized 950 or 990. So now let's talk about more serious stuff. But still not too bad, the low-end grunt. It was practically the only complaint journalists had about it at the launch, and I sort of have to agree. It is an issue an adventure motorcycle should be able to afford a tractor-like ride in first gear for special occasions. In my humble opinion, it's more of a problem when 4 things happen, like you need momentum while going slow on technical terrain, you're going uphill, in loose gravel and rough terrain, and you forgot to take it out of rally throttle. I learned rally throttle is not off-road or trial or enduro throttle. It's good only for when you're going fast on dirt roads or on open gravel highways. It's a blast. In technical terrain, however, the bike works much better in street mode. When in street throttle, the bike has no problems. I can manage it like on this trail. Where I'm going up a hill in first or second gear, traction control is on 5. That's in the middle of the traction control range, by the way. This road is steeper than what it looks on video, and you see the bike is solid. The motor does not show any hesitation, no need for clutch intervention. It's on the edge of smooth going, but I could manage the throttle. It's doing really well, if you ask me. Now let's go to this other example. Now I'm on rally throttle. Another steep climb, now going up Domingo Pass, which happens to be the session 1 of the Orbiter. I got on a switchback, as you can see, with some help from slipping the clutch. I made it through this off-camber switchback, no problem. But then, just a few yards later, going uphill, the road became a hillside ledge, rock wall on the right, a deep cliff on the left, so I slowed down. I got into a rocky session with loose rocks and gravel, and when trying to accelerate to regain speed, it was hard to manage it. I had traction control in the same position as the other example at level 5, and I was in first gear. If I were on street mode, I'm sure I would have taken care of this situation a lot better. Is this a negative? Sort of. But it appears it was enough for KTM to develop the 890 motor, which I hear is better in this department. But for now, for me, I have to remember to use street throttle when in technical terrain. Leave rally throttle for going faster on open roads. That's what rally is all about, right? Speed. The second issue is reliability. The point you are probably expecting to hear about, because everyone always says KTMs are not reliable. It's very hard for any product to be on the edge of technology development and not risk failures. Considering that the KTM 790, for what it was, revolutionary at that time, a new engine and all, I was bracing for stuff to break. For the most part, it held up well, but two things happened, and I was not alone on them. These two things that I'm going to report happened to many 790s according to the internets. Number one, clutch lubrication. On the internets, you will hear about premature clutch wear on the 790s. I since learned it is about low levels of lubrication to the clutch plates, which is an engine design problem. I was unaware of this when a problem happened to my bike. It was not premature wear, what happened to my motorcycle, but it is related to what causes the premature wear. In my case, the low lubrication caused plates to fuse together, something I never encountered on any motorcycle, certainly not at this level before this one. It was due to unique circumstances, a culmination of a specific sequence of events. Every March I had a tradition of starting my riding season by trailering a couple of motorcycles to California to ride in the Death Valley. In March of 2020 I was set to travel to California, so I got the motorcycle out of winter storage and changed its oil and filter as usual. I was all packed and ready to go, but I had to cancel the trip due to work commitments, and the bike was untouched since the fresh oil change. It was winter and all, so the bike sat for another 2 solid months until I decided to go on a ride. I got the bike ready, cameras rolling and all. I climbed on it and I could not get it in first gear. I turned the engine off, clutch fully engaged. I put it in first gear, turned the engine back on, and even with the clutch lever all the way in, the bike lurched and tractored forward. I tried it 3 times because, well, you need to beat on a dead horse to make sure it's really dead. And on the 3rd try, I got it wedged in the car tent pole before I could stop it. After freeing the bike from the pole, I got into diagnostic mode. I removed the clutch cover to find out that some clutch plates were frozen together. I went to my local KTM dealer to explain the situation and order a new set of clutch plates. The dealer offered to do the work under warranty, but considering the circumstances, in my case I was not 100% positive that it was the motorcycle's fault, and considering the low price and easiness of the job, I decided to replace them myself. After all, I then realized I would need to learn this job. I would probably need to replace the clutch plates again at some point. Well, a few years later it is working well. I never had any other problems. But now I know. I learned my lesson. So I hope you don't get in a similar situation with your 790 after an oil change. Make sure you rev the motor and move the plates. I mean fully engage the clutch, to prevent the plates from getting dry if you will not be riding it for a while. And for overall durability of the clutch plates, outside of my scenario, and to prevent what others have been complaining regarding premature wear, change the oil frequently and don't forget the oil filter to prevent any obstruction to the limited and small oil jets that lubricate the clutch plates. I hear KTM has fixed this issue in the 890 motors. Now let's get into the suspension. There was a lot of hype about this motorcycle coming with the WP Explorer. It has great suspension specs and components. It is something I really like about this motorcycle. But there are also complaints about it. My motorcycle was not the only one to experience a shock failure. My problem happened when the bike had 1,600 miles on the clock. I was in the Death Valley. I had ridden a really nasty road the day before the incident, the racetrack road. It is a washboard for miles. If you go too slow, it's very uncomfortable, so you need to find the right speed for things to get smoother. And the bike did a great job at it. It was good. I got back to the camp and it seemed normal. The next day I went on a ride to Ballarat. Have I mentioned how much fun it is to ride this motorcycle on open dirt roads? On the way back, at first things were great. And then things got sideways. I heard the sounds and felt the knock of the rear suspension hitting the end of travel. I felt the bike got a bit loose, especially after I stopped to help a couple who waved me to stop. They tried to turn their RV around on this road and got it stuck. So when I got back to town and stopped at the visitor center to provide the RV location for towing assistance, I checked the bike and confirmed my thoughts. The bike was pogoing. I got back to camp and with a closer inspection, it was easy to see the shock was blown. When I got back home, I got in touch with my local KTM dealer who immediately contacted their rep, and with no drama, they got authorized to rebuild the shock on KTM's dime. I looked for alternatives, but they are expensive. But considering I'll be on my own, without KTM support, should the shock fail again, I'll definitely be looking for something else. Definitely not the eBay special. The solution will cost me more than $1,000 on April 2024 prices. Well, it's time for my final thoughts. There is no question this motorcycle is awesome. That magic formula that I mentioned at the beginning of the video, which led me to purchase this motorcycle, the suspension when it works, the full suite of electronics, it being lightweight and with a low center of gravity, and to top it off, the lively motor, especially when in rally throttle, it's all there. The 790R set the bar higher for mid-size adventure motorcycles in 2019, similar to what the 950 did 15 years earlier in 2004. I like that I'm riding the machine that was the protagonist of a new chapter on adventure riding, and on top of that, it met my expectations. But there's no denial. The reliability issue is real and it's on the back of my mind. If my riding needs remain the same, that is, I'll continue to ride on these awesome roads here in Oregon and neighboring states, the 790 remains on the top of the list of current mid-size competitors in terms of specs. Perhaps only the 890 version of this bike would convince me to trade it in today. To be honest with you, of all adventure motorcycles available today, the only ones that capture my attention today, as I'm editing this video at the beginning of April of 2024, are the Ducati Desert X and the BMW 1300 GS. But I haven't ridden either. For now though, neither of these two bikes would substitute my 790 for how it performs where I ride it here in Oregon. One of these other bikes, if I ever buy one of them, would have to be in addition to the 790, especially if it were the case for the BMW 1300 GS. I think I know the 790 weak points at this point, so I'll keep it for now, at least for as long as I can afford to have a backup bike on my rides. Overall, the 790 has been a great partner to me as I keep chasing the horizon. If you are still here, I appreciate you watching the video to this point. If it is possible, please subscribe or give it a like. Who knows, maybe I'll have to monetize this channel to afford a new shock for this motorcycle.